Yes.
Because we managed to put the sound. Oh my goodness. Okay, guys. Hopefully we are only 5 minutes late. So that's great. I don't know if some of you found the Lima. I heard some people that are quite close. So please rush. Once you find the sentence, you have to understand who is who. Just say it. Okay. It's my true privilege to introduce to you Attila. I have forgotten your last name. It's more easy to pronounce than to spell. And Jérôme, your name is also complicated. That is perfect. Okay. They will talk about a just fantastic subject, kind of serious application for some people, but not the users of a game inside a game, or so on. It's a bit complicated, I think. You will see, it's just great. Can I probably use this? Can I switch this one? Yeah, this one. So thanks a lot for the kind introduction. And for the patience, we have a little bit of technical difficulty. Today we're going to talk about video games and citizen science, and you might be wondering about the strange title. There is this expression of video game payer, which is something that you might have never heard about. Me neither. This was something of a sort of a Freudian slip, I think, in the program, and for historical accuracy, we decided to keep it here as well. What you see here, this is a real-life, massive, physical arcade machine. It's something that is rarely the focus of game-related conferences nowadays, or probably ever. But believe me, this is something which is highly relevant in 2023. This machine is currently on exhibition in Zurich at ZHDK, the Museum of Gestaltung. And so if you have the chance to go there, it's still visible until mid-July, if I'm not mistaken. They have a really nice game design exhibition. The machine itself is a piece of art. It was created by a company in the US that are creating props for major Hollywood movies. I believe that they created the props for The Mandalorian. So it's really, really something special. But more importantly, this is a physical arcade machine that was born in the virtual world. And so if you want to see the original of this arcade machine, it's this one. This one can be found on Sanctuary 3, which is a spaceship in the Borderlands 3 video game. And if you go to the medic bay, then you find this arcade machine. And today I'm going to talk about how this arcade machine got into the Zurich Museum of Gestaltung, but also in Borderlands 3. So just to give you a little bit of idea how perfect remake of the virtual one, the physical one, so I wanted to switch back a little bit. It's really worth to check out. So I'm Attila Sander, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Massively Multiplayer Online Science, which is a small Swiss company. Also I'm an adjunct professor at McGill University. And although I'm going to talk a lot about science today, I'm not coming from academia, but more from software development. And already me, I don't consider myself young anymore, unfortunately, but already me, I was growing up with video games. So video games was something that was a everyday experience for ourselves. This was my first next-gen console when I was a kid. And And so it was really fascinating to see these couple of decades of development of the industry, how video games became something of that was considered something almost like a pointless, nerdy activity, mostly for young boys, to something which is one of the most important form of entertainment of today and serving something like 3 billion people. And we've seen that games are just really everywhere. And if you look at the story of how it was unfolded, how Facebook or Meta wanted to create the metaverse and is struggling and mostly failing with it. And as a contrast to that, we see how Epic, which is primary video game company, without even uttering that word metaverse, they are very successful in building a very complex experience in the virtual space, and we see how video games really became the focal point, or one of the most important focal points of our virtual lives. So I would argue that seeing that we have a responsibility to try to find solutions and try to find clever ways to extract value out of all this time that we spend in these virtual worlds, and what we're doing is an attempt to do that. So the other thing that I'm talking about today is citizen science, and we're talking today about this citizen science, which is one of the definitions would be the involvement of the general public in the scientific research process. And it takes many forms, it's nothing new. Already in the online scene, it has been there for 15 years. One of the first big successes was Galaxy Zoo, which later became Zooniverse. And even if you haven't heard about the term citizen science, I'm sure you've heard about projects like Foldit, which is the protein folding, crowdsourced mini game where we try to help researchers better understand the secondary structure of proteins. Or another example would be iWire, where we are trying to help scientists to map the visual neurons, if I remember well, of the mouse, by analyzing these black and white images. Or another example would be Fido, which is one of the most successful ones, and by the way, it's Jerome is the founder of this citizen science project, which is a DNA multiple sequence alignment minigame aiming to help geneticists to have a better way to analyze this kind of data. Now, citizen science always fascinated me, and I think it's quite an amazing concept that us outsiders can chip into the scientific process. But in reality, what happens is that this is a highly repetitive activity, often, and what we've seen that users are really bouncing off from these services and mini games. So most citizen science projects suffer with user acquisition, so to find new users, and user engagement to keep them on the platform. And so that's where the story started roughly 8 years ago, when we started massive multiplayer online science, and that was our core idea, is to take these citizen science activities and integrate them with already existing video games, so that they became an organic part of these bigger virtual universes, let's say. And this integration would mean an integration with the narrative, an integration with the visual language, and also with the reward system. And so we thought that if we managed to make it happen, then we probably can tap into a new resource which was unavailable previously for citizen science. And so one of the first projects that we started to work on was together with EvoLine. It's made by an Icelandic company called CCP. This is one of the biggest science fiction themed massive multiplayer online games. This year they will celebrate their 20th anniversary, which is in itself an amazing feat, that you can create something in the entertainment industry that remains interesting and relevant and intriguing for players. And so we approached them, and although I had no previous contact with the gaming industry, they were really open to this idea. And relatively quickly in AAA timeline, we managed to implement the first project together, which was a collaboration with Human Protein Atlas in Sweden. Their research team were curating a large open database of microscopic images of human cells and tissues. And we took the subcellular atlas, which contains these beautiful immunofluorescent microscopy images, and we created a small minigame inside EVE Online, which looked like this, where the player was presented one of the 250,000 images from this data set, and they were asked to localize the green staining, which was which signified that there is a certain protein on that part of the cell. This became an instant success in EVE Online. The player base immediately embraced this, the whole concept, and they started to contribute to the project. I have a lot of interesting numbers about that, but I think what tells most about how successful it was that one of the things that EVE Online designers created was a suite of rewards. And this was the Sisters of Eve combat suit, which was the ultimate reward. And of course, game designers made some estimations of how much time would it take for the most active players to unlock the biggest reward of the game. And they were calculating with something like 3 to 4 weeks. The first one was unlocked in 17 hours after launch, and the second one 6 minutes later. So that's when we knew that this is going to work beautifully for science. On this project, this was our first major scientific publication. It's quite remarkable in the sense that Nature usually does not publish fake science, but they thought that this is important enough, so they greenlighted to show non-existing spaceships on the cover of Nature Biotechnology. This was also an amazing tool for engaging with the community. This was the first ever Citizen Science Live tournament, where we, at FanFest, which is the player convention of EVE Online in Reykjavik, we do this live tournament so players could play with the minigame. On the red-haired guy is the CEO of CCP Hilmar. There's Emma, the lead researcher, and some guys from the research team. And the main reward was a lab code for the Human Protein Atlas signed by all the research team. In 2017, we switched to another project that was in exoplanet research, together with the University of Geneva. And we used the so-called transit method to search for new exoplanet candidates in the data set. The transit method basically takes these luminescence graphs, and you see dips in this graph. And if you see a periodic dip, it might mean there is a planet passing in front of the star and blocking a part of the light coming from the star. And this is the interface that was created inside the game. So all the tools that you need to analyze this data set, which is basically trying to find signal in the noise type of problem in citizen science. One of the things which was very important from the beginning is the narrative integration. And this was working beautifully with this project, where Misha Mayer, who here, I don't need to introduce him too much, but he's the guy who discovered the first exoplanet and got the Nobel Prize for it 2 years ago. He was part of the project, and he got an avatar in game. He was the one, his avatar gave you the quest to solve these problems. But also he came to FanFest once personally to give a talk and mingled with the players and talked with the players. And this image was published in Ars Technica, and I love it a lot. Background, you see the beautiful facade of the Harpa, the Reykjavik Opera House. On the right, you see Michel Mayer. On the left, you see the Space Pope. This guy is cosplaying as one of the religious leaders in the game. And in real life, he is Chief Education Officer at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. So that's quite about the rich facets of this project. And here's this I took from YouTube of some of the comments on Hisham-Ayar's presentation at FanFest. And it's really the kind of response that researchers want to see, the kind of engagement and inspiration when you do science communication and science outreach. And of course, for that project, we also had some really nice cosmetic outfits and some cool spaceship skins. Now, one of the things that we anticipated from the beginning, even when we started to talk with these game developer companies, that probably journalists would be interested in it, so it's a kind of a good way to do additional PR for them. It worked out way better than we ever dreamed of, and the story was covered in major journals around the world. I mean, EVE Online is one of the big games in the game industry, so they're often covered because of different things that are happening in the game, but having an article in the New Yorker, that's not obvious, and this project was covered in the New Yorker and BBC and many places. Just last year we had 3 major documentaries, one is running on Amazon Prime about these projects. And we also got some really nice awards, like this one, or the Innovation Award from the University of Geneva, or the Lavie Awards, which we didn't know about, but previously it was handed out to people like David Attenborough or the European Space Agency, and it was quite fascinating that they decided that a video game-based project is worthwhile to stand in this line. Now in 2020, we started a new project, and that was together with Jeroen, when I received an email from Berger, who is the creative director at CCP, and he asked me whether we could help in any ways, and that was around the first wave of COVID. And very quickly, since everything was already set up, all the tech and all the components were in place, very quickly we managed to set up a new project together with McGill University and BC Cancer Vancouver and the University of Modern and Regional Media to analyze these images to present a clustering problem for players. These are images which are a high-dimensional data set coming from the human blood, and by analyzing it, we help researchers better understand how the immune system reacts to certain conditions, COVID being one of them. And here I want to show you a video, and we have a little bit of problem with the sound, but it's subtitled, so I hope it can work. And the reason why I show this video is this is a short interview which was on BBC, and I find it really interesting because they interviewed a player, so it tells a lot why a player would participate in such an activity.
Secondly, probably the more important part is just how relevant it is to me. Like, I can finally relate to this. It's really just like citizen science to a T. We had a giant group of people, and we made this fun. We gamified this quite a bit. There's incentives for people to do it that'll boost their game experience.
Now in 2020 we released another project together with Gearbox. Borderlands 3 is one of the major IPs of the game industry. I believe in 2019 it was the biggest top grossing new release. And it's a game which is a first-person shooter looter. So in the teaser trailer there were these kind of taglines. And this is something where you don't really believe that these kind of almost meditative scientific activities or mini games could work at all. Partly because if you want to be any good in the game, you have to have put your 150% of your attention to it. So it was really interesting to see how game designers would go about it. In 2020 April, the game was released in 2019, and in 2020 April there was a free update to the game which contained a small mini game called Borderlands Science, and that's exactly when this arcade machine appeared in the game. So this arcade machine appeared at Medic Bay. There was a new quest. You could go there and start to play the mini game. This mini game, there is a video that Jerome will show to you, so we'll explain much better, and Jerome will talk about it much more in detail. It's basically a new implementation of the Philo citizen science project that Jerome was developing for many years. So I already showed you that this is the Philo mini game where you shuffle or try to align the base pairs of small DNA fragments. And what happened is that Gearbox game designers took this original concept, redesigned it a bit, made some changes which made it much more enjoyable and digestible, and also, of course, they fitted to the Borderlands 3 visual language. And in 2020 April, we put it into the game. So this is very interesting for us because we have quite a good comparison of how such an activity works in a classical web-based setting and in a video game. The day that we introduced this feature inside Borderlands 3, we collected 5 times more data than during the 10 years that Jerome was running this project. So this is the kind of power that gamers bring to citizen science. Now, these projects work really nicely, but we have identified a couple of bottlenecks in the last 8 years. There are 2 major bottlenecks that the game developers are super busy. There's simply too much for them to deliver. It's not that they're looking for new features in the game, but they try to deliver on deadline. So it's in retrospect, it's almost a miracle that we managed to pull this off together with CCP and Borderlands. There are certain research projects which are really worthwhile to support, but when we start to talk with the researchers, it's clear that they will never make it to a AAA video game, and that can be for many reasons. Maybe the data set is too small, maybe just it's too complex. So if you remember the folded example, there's no way that the game developer would dedicate that much resources to implement that inside the game, and so on and so on. So there is a new thing that we're working on, which I believe can again be a very substantial move forward in this initiative that we started. Is we're implementing a new mobile app, and the mobile app in 2023 doesn't sound to be too revolutionary, but what we're trying to do here is we are trying to keep the connection with games. So we're trying to keep this sort of DNA of our project, but decouple it from the games a bit. So it would work almost like a companion app to major games. We believe that this would lower the commitment that we would expect from game companies, so we could develop the mini games ourselves, but would still keep the players engaged because we would keep this activity in the reward loop. So while players would play this mobile app, and at the end of the day they get home in front of the PCs and consoles, they could use this sort of reward rewards that they accrued inside the mobile app to get their favorite guns or basic skins in the games that they play with. Also, we are thinking about decoupling the rewards from the actual experience, which is important so that we can support citizen science initiatives which are not one-to-one connected to a major game, but we can tell players that, hey, we see that you're very active in, let's say, Borderlands science, try this one out, and you will get the same kind of rewards in Borderlands as with the other project. So this is the thing that we're working on, and now I pass it over to Jérôme to give you some more details about the research.
Thanks, Isla. All right, so what I would now, which is in the second part of the talk, when we try to speak more about the specific project of modern science, because we believe that it's a milestone in the way we do in citizen science. And I try to convince you also that what we're doing here is not just gamifying science, it's so bringing back and changing the way we're scaling up research to do science at a scale of society now. And we do that thanks to video games. So let's try to go back first. I'm a computer scientist at McGill University, Montreal, Canada. And initially my field of research was bioinformatics. So, I mean, I'm developing algorithms to study the shape of RNA and proteins interaction with molecules. And when I was a step back, try to understand first what does it mean to be a scientist, what's the scientific method. And the classical presentation, I mean, there's many diagrams, these wheels that we can show, but this simple one works quite well here, is like usually we don't really have access to reality, right? We have a mathematical, a model representation of the world that we use to interpret the world around us. And to understand if this model is good or not, we're making hypotheses, and we're testing them through experiments, give us a feedback about reality. And then when you get the result of the experiments, we're taking this result, we're analyzing and potentially point out discrepancies and compare them to the model to correct the inaccuracies of the model. And you can go on and on like this because there's no model that is a perfect incarnation of reality, but we try to get better at every step. So the key part that's interesting for us here is really this part when we're analyzing the result. And usually it's done because you know that nowadays we are working on computers. It's really a scientist sitting back with on the desk with his computer, cracking numbers, and having a scientist interpreting the analysis of the computers to correct the model eventually behind. And this is an important part for me because this is the one I'm working on, but also that's the one that have key issues in terms of how do we work with it. So the problem these key steps here is difficult for many reasons, but the two main ones that I want to point out is first that the problem we're facing here when analyzing the data are extremely difficult, being by nature. They often belong to categories of problem called NP hard. Basically means it's super difficult, and if you want to find an optimal solution, you need to run your computers for centuries. But I would eventually argue that it's not the most difficult part of it. It's mostly because whatever mathematical model or computer model you're using, you don't have, you cannot encapsulate, I was saying, completely the reality. So the scoring function, the score that you're using to tell what's the quality of my model, is just partially reflects some aspect of the problem, but not all of it. And in science, it's always what we're facing every day. It's like we're computing some scores and qualities, but we need someone behind to contextualize the finding and understanding it. And how do we do that? Well, by involving a brilliant researcher there. And arguably, we recognize all Marie Curie here. We're probably one of the most famous geniuses of all time in science. And this is a vision that we have about science. Like we have a genius scientist sitting in a desk and solving all the problems for us. We don't have to understand it. But the problem we're facing is that, well, modern science is no longer like this. I mean, like we have many different types of data we're collecting, data sets, and all of these data actually turns out to be very specific and narrow to one very field of research. So you need specialists for almost all these different types of measurements of reality you can do. And you need to, after merge all these specialists together to create the research. And the truth is that the way science is done nowadays, it's done by teams. I mean, it's not a single scientist, but it's really teams of 10, 100, thousands of scientists working together to achieve these major advancements of the common knowledge. And we reach a point nowadays that if you look at the major populations, like the 4D nuclear project, the ENCODE project, the LHC, if you look at the author list, you have to go to a supplementary material nowadays, because there's so many researchers involved in there that we cannot list them and put their name up front. So how do we address the problem of scaling up? By the citizen science, when typically we need to involve people into the science to help us and compensate for the lack of trained scientists that we would need to classically perform the science. So as you can guess from the talk of Attila here, of course, the solution we try to bring here, because we have massive amount of data, so we need massive amount of participants into this project. And for doing this, we use the video gamers to help us solving the problem. Because if you think about it, so playing a video game is solving a problem. It's what we're doing by playing is solving a problem that generates hormones that basically make us happy and want to solve more problems. And when you're considering the vast potential of players, with virtually more than 3 billion people playing video games all around the world here, if we can tap into this potential, we have the resources we need to advance the research, as was mentioned. So our first attempt to address this was with Philo, as Attila mentioned. It was this video game we launched in 2010. It was a summer project. I mean, so I remember I was back at MIT, was discussing with my office mate, and showed me they were saying, okay, let's do something like what Louis von Hahn was doing to what he called the concept of game above us. So you may have known by the ESP game at this time. We started thinking about what type of problem could be addressed with this. And a couple of years later, when I arrived at McGill, I hired two undergraduate students, Alex Patricot and Mario Manis. We implemented this small interface of solving one of the most fundamental problems of genomics we call the multiple sequence alignment. So the idea is that you take fragments of DNA, try to compare them to see similarities, and it's very important for us as scientists because these similarities can reveal genes or functional features of our genomes. And so we implement this interface the best we could at this time. And of course, it's not like when I'm speaking about citizen science and quantum numbers involving people, it's not only done by people, because here we're speaking about aligning genomes of 3 billion characters, and we have hundreds of them. And you cannot give all this data to one single player. So really the idea is to see it's like human computer systems, when you have first computers cracking and making the first approximation of the alignment, then you extract the fragment out of it that you play in the interface, and then after reinserting it. The reinsertion is a bit complicated, I won't speak about it, it's quite technical, but it's not just copy-paste, of course. But when we look back at what makes Philo a successful and viable project, it's because it was based on 3 major pillars. The first one is that it was a fundamental problem in molecular biology. When you do citizen science, it's very important to remember you don't want to address a niche problem that would just be interested for one couple of scientists around the world, because we're speaking about trying to involve as many people as possible. So the topic should be of broad appeal for the community. 2, of course, it has to be a very well defined problem, and a problem defined and found to be complex for computers, because otherwise there's no point of using computers. In the case of alignment, it's because the similarities trying to find are similar but not identical, and the border, the threshold, both by saying that something is different or the same, is very fuzzy one. And this is because humans are capable of making intuitively setting up this threshold that it works. But most importantly, this is what I think was the main novelty actually of Philo here, is like for the first time we're trying to embed that into a casual time-matching game. So making a game that is accessible. One of the main novelty of Philo was that you don't need any training to do it, to play it. That wasn't the case in previous games. And you don't need registration. You could go to the web page, play for 1 or 2 minutes and leave, and you still make a contribution. So it was really about opening the game to anyone. And it works quite well. So we had about more than 500,000 people that contributed over 10 years, more than 1 million solutions collected, and we proved that it worked, and we improved the alignment for most of the methods. We compare all methods to the state-of-the-art algorithm, and we showed improvement. So the concept works. Although there was one bad news with Philo, that even if the concept works, it not works well enough, because eventually the goal we want to reach here is like, how do we bring that for the most hardest topic on research today? And one of them is the study of the human microbiome. So I don't know if you know it, but I mean, roughly more than half of your cells in your body belongs to microbes. We're mostly aliens to some extent. And one of the major research in health nowadays is understanding how these microbes can influence our health and our well-being in general. And for instance, we found connection to Alzheimer's. We have, of course, connection to obesity, diabetes, and these kind of things. But I mean, that plays a major role. The problem now is like we have too much data. So how do we solve that? And of course, this is where MMOS and gets in place. So I was starting to think of this problem when I saw the EVE Online project out, and I get in touch with Attila, who basically was telling me that it's yeah, that sounds interesting, let me think about it, what to see what you can do about it. And in a couple of years, because telling that this project is not that easy, he came up and said, so maybe I found someone that would be interested to integrate your game into the game. And it turns out that this company was Gearbox, developing this Borderlands franchise. But when you look at Borderlands, that's really a first-person shooter looter. I mean, who will think about doing citizen science within this type of games? We're speaking here having the biggest gun, as many guns as possible, and shooting aliens. So that seems like to quote Attila, an unlikely match, a marriage between the activities. Yet, here we're speaking about what we need to do for this project, which we're involving hundreds of thousands, millions of people. So that's typically the type of game where we need to do that. And by sitting here, that the process, like once you agree that it was a cool project, that the game has the potential to be integrated, then we start sitting with game designers and try to redesign the game to end up with this revival version of Philo that is Borderlands science. And so there's many things we could speak about the design of the game itself for hours too. But there's many important change that was done here. The fact that playing vertically, to play with gravity and giving a better sense about the weight of your actions within the game that are translated for us into weight of evolutionary events. There's also my own perspective in the design. I don't see it like just, actually, what was very interesting during the work of the game designer is not just a version adapted with just the graphics of Philo that has been adapted. There was really a fundamental work done at the way we play it. Because if you see the way you play the game, basically you have all this grid collapsing to the bottom, and you have to introduce these yellow tiles at the right places. But this is no way it's not how you work in science here. I mean, we don't give you a specific number of tiles and try to put it at the right places. But what we tried to do, but it was a mechanism suggested by us, by the game designer. And by working, scientists and game designer together, we found a way to make this game mechanism relevant for the scientific task that we have in here, which is what we're calling here this kind of a game-first approach, where we try to first think about what game we're playing with and try to make it scientifically relevant instead of the opposite. But the success of this was not just designing the game, it's how you integrate it into the platform, the game itself. And as I mentioned, remember the cabinet we see at the beginning, this is the cabinet where we play Borderlands. It's based on the main spaceship of Borderlands, it's called Sanctuary 3. And it's basically a place where you can chill out when you are waiting for friends, going to out of missions. And it turns out to be a central social hub for this experience. And it was a key element when you put it there, because this is where you can attract the attention of people. And of course, you have boosters and different skins that you can collect from it. So we benefited of all the engagement system of this video game already in place. And As I mentioned, I mean, I think the ball and science has been a success well beyond what we initially imagined. So we collected, I think, more than in half a day, more than 10 years of data with Fido. And I would argue also that data is more complex and more interesting. And now, up to today, we had more than 4 million participants that contributed, and we collected 130 million solutions to the puzzles. And the puzzle that we have, so you showed the easiest one, but some of them are super complicated. I wouldn't even myself be able to complete them, but turns out some players are quite good at it and perform quite well. So I think we can confidently say that this project is probably the most, or at least one of the most successful and popular citizen science project ever released. So what are we doing with results? So again, I won't go into detail here, but there's many things that the opportunities open now through the data we collected and through this media that we're putting in place, because now you can play your favorite video games and you're doing science into it. By collecting this data, of course, we're improving this alignment. Well, this is kind of tricky, so this is basically almost a scientific slide, but with cool video game design, because we don't know the ground truth. So the best you can do is collecting aggregate evidences that you have an improvement. That's what we're doing. But of course, in this era of AI, that's also open new opportunities. Because one of the goals of citizen science is like, well, usually why on this problem we don't have an AI solution? We just have done enough data. I mean, it's too specific, there's too broader context to interpret the result, that an AI solution doesn't work at this stage. But by integrating this and trying to harness the collective wisdom of researchers collecting the solution we collected there, we can now open the door to AI solutions. So for instance, in the context of microbiome alignment, our goal is and what we're doing now is training agent that will be able to customize the best algorithm to this specific problem and having in the future not having to result on the players and citizens to do this specific task. We move to something different. And of course, beyond that, and I will conclude with this, there's also all these other opportunities opened by these techniques. So this, Attila mentioned about all the impact it got into the press coverage and the recognition was there. But there's also this feeling that, and actually now there's two, I remember this, the BBC video shows really that it really helps to empower people. So beyond the scientific result itself, it helps to have participants finally being able to not be simple spectators of the scientific process, but being part of it. And it doesn't matter at which level it is, because even the simplest one is significant for them. And then when you start playing this game, what you do by playing a game is you create emotion. And when you create emotion, this is where you start moving people. You don't move people by understanding logical argument and try to make your point by demonstrating that you're right and the other one is wrong by fact. It doesn't not how it works. It works by creating emotion of people, and typically what these games are doing is creating emotion while doing science. And by doing this, you're reinforcing the public trust into science. So eventually, what I think I believe too is like what we try to do is not just helping, like say, doing science, but it's creating new generation of knights for science, basically of people empowered by science and embracing the freedom that science can give you. So just to conclude this is all the people that work on the Borderlands. I mean, not all, but one part, the one I didn't forget. All participants of the project, and the founders, and Attila promised at the very end we can show you the trailer of Borderlands, which is a masterpiece of art, and often it's able to convey exactly what we're doing in much less work than I did like for the last 20 minutes. So let's try to play it. We should try it, yeah. Give it a shot. If we don't hear anything, just, yeah.
Hey folks, this is Maya Biology, actor, PhD scientist, researcher, and your favorite person. Today, I'm here to talk to you about video games and science, and how we can grab both by their necks and make them kiss, consensually. Long story short, by playing Borderlands 3, you can contribute to real-world scientific research, as in data that helps real people in need space. Speaking of need, did you know that more than half the cells in our bodies are alien? Only 43% of our cells are of human origin. The rest belong to foreign microbes. These microbes have a massive impact on our body's health. The more we study microbes, the more we can learn about the accumulation of meat and existential terror that is the human body. These microbes are made up of DNA, just like us. Each microbe has its own special DNA signature, and similar species of microbes have similar DNA. If we could sequence all the different species of microbes found in the human body, which, remember, make up more than half of the cells in our body, we'd learn a ton about ourselves. To that end, the Microsenate Initiative collected tens of thousands of samples of, to use the scientific term, doo-doo, extracted the DNA of the microbes inside, and sequenced it. Now we just need to organize this data. Unfortunately, though computers excel at certain tasks, like crunching numbers or tracking down specific pornography, they're not so good at organizing DNA information. See, different species of microbes have similar, but not quite identical DNA. That means mapping their sequences can be kind of ambiguous. The computer makes lots of small mistakes that can corrupt downstream analysis. Which brings us back to video games! So, we've got several million sequences that are each 150 nucleotides long, that are riddled with small errors from the computer analysis. How can we get rid of all these errors? With your help. We've taken the millions of DNA sequences and broken them down into bite-sized puzzles that you can play and solve inside Borderlands 3. And try not to think about the fact that the DNA came from human excrement when I use phrases like bite-sized. By playing Borderlands Science inside Borderlands 3, you'll be directly helping our scientists organize and compare this dung data. The game is simple. You'll be confronted with different strands of DNA, each made up of individual tiles. It's your job to place as many of these tiles as possible in their appropriate row while matching the colors. It's not always possible to line everything up perfectly, but that's okay. By playing the game and matching the sequences, you'll also be identifying the errors in our computer analysis and helping scientists across the planet build a better algorithm for the future. And since all this research is open access, the entire scientific community will benefit from it. This research could directly lead to a universal catalog of all known microbes, which could lead to new breakthroughs in food, medicine, exercise. The sky's the limit. And it all starts with you playing a video game. But if the pursuit of knowledge isn't enough of an encouragement to sort through virtual butt microbes, then fear not. Playing Borderlands Science earns you in-game currency you can spend on booster items for your characters. Oh, and this is all totally free. Just activate the Borderlands Science machine on Sanctuary 3 and sort some gut microbes.
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much. Jerome and Atina. Question time. I guess so.
I can just shout out. It's okay. Do you collect data on how often people play? Do they play just once and give up, or do they keep playing? And what drives them to come back? And is there a limit where they reach like, okay, I can't do any more, and then just stop? Or what do you see with player behavior?
So what I know, like the good part of the Borderlands project is because we have comparison points with Final before. So Final was a fully open, same principle. I mean, the game design was awful compared to the Borderlands, but we saw that in Final we had something around, in average, people play like 3 to 5 games, something like this. We multiply by 10 that with Borderlands Science. The idea is that we have 100 times more people, 10 to 100 times more people, and we have people playing much longer. Of course, you have always the same pattern, right? You have a lot of people playing the easy game and dropping. But Attila, more statistically, I think we have people that play thousands of puzzles easily, and it's the same curve, but the difference, like everything is shifted, and you gain 100 of magnitude. And I think that highlights also the toward the idea of MMOS, I would say that we need to use the old expertise that the game industry developed for the benefit of science.
So I could add to that is that it might be strange that we're not deeply analyzing this kind of data, because in the game industry this is like crucial to understand how players react. But in a way, it's kind of part of the core concept that we are in this, let's say, comfortable position that we shifted this responsibility and this burden onto the game developers. So they know it, they do a lot of work on that, they know exactly, and we let them do it. So many of these integrations are primarily driven by the game developers, because they know their community so much better than us would ever understand. So basically that's why we have some information, but we didn't delve into that much so far, because they're doing such an amazing job at CCP and Gearbox.
Okay, another question, maybe? Yes, I will give the microphone to Atlas.
Yeah, so thank you for truly fascinating talks. So I was lucky enough to play on the arcade in the Museum for Neuchâtel in Zurich, and I spent a lot of time playing it actually, and I had no idea I was helping science while playing it. And the reason I stayed there for such a long time is because I couldn't reach the maximum score. And I was wondering whether the target, since you don't know the ground truth, how do you fix this target, this maximum score? Is this reachable or isn't it? I mean, how do you decide like what's the target score?
Yeah, so I mean, first make a very good point about the game. Actually, to be fair, we worked with Team Fatila, trying to have a now interpretation panel inside with more instructions. It was the very first version to send, right? So we know that we have to better show this explain why it's important. Now for the game itself, what's important, like is we set it going because we have first before sending the players to the machine, we have our own agent playing the game itself. So we will try to simulate the players to see how far we can push it. And the base code is here to tell you how good what the bar you should reach, but we don't know if you can go higher or if you already reached it. So what we're doing is like we have multiple bots simulating players. We're taking one that the best one, try to lower it a bit to make it sure it's accessible, that people won't get stuck into too difficult puzzles, because it's very important when you play this puzzle and you don't get stuck and just move to a different one. But what it means when you beat the base score, it means that your position, your solution start to be interesting. Because eventually we don't know what is the best solution, and what we're interested to grasp is like if collectively people playing independently the game will converge toward the same solution. Because if they converge toward the same solution, it's potentially because the arrangement of the pattern makes more sense from a visual point of view, but for us, a magical point of view, to arrange the data. So the scope, in that when you part the scope, your chances to have valuable answers is sufficient enough to be stored and analyzed.
Okay, sorry, just a final question because we are quite late this time.
Thanks. I've got a question possibly related to machine learning. How do you classify these alignments into levels, and how do you score them?
You mean classify in terms of the difficulty of it?
Yes.
Yeah. Difficulty was relatively, so we have different measures to tell us if there's enough diversity, because compare the number, if you have in the different colors, the size of sequences, sometimes there's no need of involving human for them. So that's first filtering that is done about removing the one that the machine would like very well by itself without the help of humans. So you have some metrics like this. And then after, the way we classify by difficulties is purely in the number of sequences representing the size of the puzzles. And we just ensure behind that the puzzles are interesting enough to be sure we don't send garbage to the interface.
Well, thank you so much. Please So, for the great work of Jérôme and Attila. So, just one thing. The next session, which is just now, will be held by our next chair. So, Antoine, there, please.
Thank you. So for the next session, we will leave the health department and we go to the culture, society, and tourism. So in this session, there are 5 papers, and we won't spend too much time because we're already late. And the first paper will be presented by Simon Morat for the University of Geneva, and his paper is Video from Design and Subjective Experience in a Museum.
It's not my computer, so I don't know where it's supposed to be here. Can see the mouse. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. So, hello everyone. I'm so far really happy to be with you to talk about my research, my work. I'm a PhD student at the University of Geneva, and in this session you're going to have to listen to me twice. So, my research project is funded by the Swiss National Science Foundation, and to make it clear, to make it simple, it's about game-based learning in museum context. So, this is a picture I took at the beginning of my thesis. It's in a museum, and what can be seen here are teenagers on their phone in a museum being completely bored. And this convinced myself that there must be something to do in order to make them active learners, active visitors, and active players. And this is what the research project is about. So the first game has been developed, Jérôme, I'm going to talk about it right now, for a nature museum in Sion. And then the second game has been developed, HE-Arc Neuchâtel, for a museum on food production in Vevey, the alimentarium. So before a game, Jérôme, we want to understand from a research point of view how a game can help teenagers to develop critical thinking and knowledge about Anthropocene. So Anthropocene is a new geological epoch characterized by human action, human activities on the planet. This action, all of them, will impact the availability of natural resources, pollution, climate change, and ultimately biodiversity. Critical thinking, a really important skill, is the ability to decide what to believe or what to do, and to evaluate the relevance of available information and to make wisdom decisions. And to understand the Anthropocene, teenagers must be aware of their own relationship with knowledge, with environment, and since Anthropocene is a really complex topic, a systemic understanding is needed, as well as critical thinking. So let's talk a little bit about the game. So the gameplay or the playful visit can be divided in 4 main phases. First, the players are welcomed and challenged by a museum curator who acts as a game master. The game universe is set, and due to bad weather conditions,
Players or visitors will be stuck in a valley and they must survive in the museum. And please also, they must take care of that small tree right there. It's really important. As we are nice, we give them a really useful tool to survive, a digital tablet. Divided into teams, they must gather resources to survive. Using the tablet, they can scan the different stuffed animal. And depending on the choice they make, they will gain resources. They can, for example, hunt, protect, domesticate, or escape from the animals. This action, all of them, will impact the tree of life. So this frantic search for resources will lead to the depletion of that tree of life. And this tree is a metaphor of the quality of the environment. It's here to describe an abstract concept or a difficult concept, such as ecology, and we translate it in a more comprehensive and concrete way by providing analogy, such as the house of a tree. But at this stage, the tree of life is dead. So, game over. But even though players lost, they are given the opportunity to redeem themselves. Players are then called as wildlife experts. They must solve enigma. There is a lot of strange things going on in that museum. They deal with fake news, with rumors, with polemics related to natural environment. As they make their way to the museum, they will discover new areas, they will find clues and elements of answers, elements of the museum exhibition, allowing them to solve the enigma and to complete an ecosystemic map, which is a really important game mechanics in order to understand all the systematic links between animals and elements of the museum. Once the players have found enough elements of answers, they gather around the museum curators for a debriefing. Players discuss their discoveries, their playing experience with the museum curators, the metaphor is explained, and then the discussion focuses on the information they obtain and the criteria to assess those information. And my workload is not limited to being part of game design team, but I also have to do some research. So, based on a quite complex research method, we design the game and evaluate the way it is being played. So we assess its gameplay experience. Once a game was created, we did an a priori analysis to allow us to identify conjectures between game design and players' expected behavior. This is equivalent to the game as it should be played. The game as it should be played. Then, based on various observation and experimentation, we did an a posteriori analysis in order to answer the following research question. What are the processes that can emerge and distance players from the game experience that was originally intended? By conducting the a priori analysis, we will get to a better understanding of the actual experience of play. So we had to collect data. What we did, that we equipped some of the players, as you can see on our shoulder, with GoPro camera, and the tablet itself was recording voice message. Sometimes players must answer a question, and instead of clicking, they must record an audio message. And with those data, I did some categorical analysis on the verbatim of what players say and what the players do. And our observation enabled us to identify processes that will shape the playing experience, making it unique and subjective. This is why I call the actualization of players' game experience. So there is a couple of processes that can appear. Continuity, for example, is when players act as expected in the a priori analysis. This is good, this is great. It's when players collaborate actively, when they talk about the game and nothing else. It's when they read the available information and they stay together through the museum. Of course, there is discontinuity. It's when players break momentarily away from the expected scenario, expected behavior. Discontinuity occurs when there is misunderstanding of the rules, of specific in-game information, or short-time physical separation from the group. A major discontinuity could be server errors. It happens sometimes, and when the game crashes, then the game universe is broken. Another interesting phenomenon is divergence. It's the way players process information, even though they are deeply engaged in the game, is central for learning. Indeed, it's expected that players should read and learn about the characteristics of different stuffed animals in the museum. A careful reading is expected and needed and should allow them to understand the relationship between the animal and to question also fake news. However, we observe that some teams, not all of them, just collect information without paying attention to the meaning of those information, which means that they switched the game that was intended to be an investigation game to a quest game. Then there is epistemic obstacle. So since epistemic obstacle is when players appear to be resistant to the idea that there is not necessarily a single solution for a given problem. This appears because in the game we have complex problem, illustrative problem. We don't have an open, we don't have a closed solution, a unique solution, but an open-ended solution. And we realize that some players were really used to have at school one correct answer, and it's not the case in that kind of thematic such as anthropocene. And then there is unexpected emotion. We were expecting some frustration. Why frustration? Because players always lost during the first phase of the game. The game has been designed in that way that it's impossible to succeed in the first phase of the game. So we were expecting them to feel frustration. When we asked them through a specific interface in the gameplay, they identified joy. So they were having a good time as a main emotion. Some players also were scared because when they go downstairs in the museum, there is like a dark room with a beer, and others were sad because all the animals were obviously dead. So that's it for the main result. It's not the main result, it's part of my PhD result. And as a conclusion, I will say that Geo, this game, teaches us that there is no need for competition in such kind of game. We have deliberately removed any competition time game mechanics. Competition is self-created by the players at certain point of the game. And then players realize that their actions are linked to each other and they start to collaborate between each groups. Then, as I say, teenager and such complex problem is still somehow an issue. So we need to create maybe more games that assess this kind of complexity and then players must solve illustrative problem. Then play is subjective. We have designed a certain kind of game and then we realize that players appropriate themselves this kind of game. And not all of them, but players don't win. It's like, okay, playing is fun, playing has nothing to do with reading, and as long as, even if there is just a little bit text, they are not really motivated to read anything. And last, metaphor is powerful to engage and to introduce knowledge in such game-based learning physics. So as perspective and indeed, I would say that I need to further develop specific indicators, specific process in order to assess the gameplay experience. I need to model the playful experience considering these processes, so it's more research perspective. The game itself will be delivered in 1 month, and the museum will be completely autonomous about the way to use it, which is not always the case in a research project. Sometimes we develop a prototype, we try it a couple of times, we collect data, and then the prototype dies somewhere. Now the museum will really use that game as a museum, as a visit device. So bibliography, and I have a couple of papers that are already published, and one will be published in the International Journal of Theory this autumn. So we are still collecting and doing some research about this game. Thank you for your attention.
Questions?
I can answer.
Yes.
So, do you, in your research, look at emotion a little differently? Because there could be emotion caused by just the fact that you're in a museum, you're playing a game, and then obviously that could hide the emotions coming from actual game design, which should be hidden because of the fact that you're in a museum playing a game. You know, so how do you prevent like incorrect emotional data from that?
So we introduce a specific interface in order to collect emotion, and not all the emotion, but to focus on epistemic emotion. I don't know if you are used to this, but Thus, there is emotion in the learning context that could be really useful because they will motivate you to go a little bit further in your research, but there are also really tricky emotion because you can then give up. For example, frustration, you just don't know that little thing that you need to know, so it could be a good thing to create frustration in a game that until a certain point you fall in boredom. So with the teachers, so it's in French, but we had to introduce that drag and drop emotion self-reported interface, and at 3 points during the game, for example, when they lost, when they find some information that are contradictory, and at the end of the game, they must feel this emotion self-report questionnaire. And for example, boredom, we just say that I'm getting bored, or curiosity, I wasn't expecting this, and they just drag and drop, and they can add up to 2 emotions. And we were expecting a lot of frustration, and they were just maybe joyful and curious. So this was a part of the game, but I think if you want to understand the playful experience, emotion is one aspect of them, and then there is lots of other aspects to monitor and to test. Does it answer a little bit? Yeah.
Other questions?
The first picture you showed the teenagers, it seemed to be in an art museum.
Yeah.
And this is a more topical museum, so how do you think that would change the design of a game for such a museum?
Of course, in our project, we had those partners as museum. And for sure, an art museum has other objective, another scenography, museography, and it will be quite challenging to create a game for an art museum. I had this picture because it was really at the beginning, and I was, okay, this is how teenagers act in that kind of museum, and there must be something that we can do a lot.
So how do you think you would handle designing a game for an art museum?
Maybe with some AR, when you scan an image, then there is something that could appear and make, also creating links between all those images and add some more storytelling, narration, enigmas, so all kind of playful experience like this. But so far we don't have any research project with an art museum. Maybe in the upcoming years.
I know that they tried something in the Van Gogh Museum of Van Gogh in Amsterdam, but I don't think it truly worked yet. So that's why I was wondering if you looked into it.
Okay, good.
Thank you. Other questions? I think we should go to the next paper. Thank you very much. So the next one is Time Travelers from Maria Plukova from the HE-Arc School of Art and Design at HESSO. And there is like a video that she did, but she cannot attend today.
My name is Plukova Maria. I'm first year student of Master of Design at HE-Arc. Today I'm going to present work Time Travelers. Thanks to HE-Arc Media Design Department, this resource has been possible. The context. Time Travelers is a unique project that aims to explore the concept of time and how it is perceived by individuals. interacting with fictional characters is natural language raises new design and answering questions. What steps can be taken to ensure that the time travel characters are represented in a unique and authentic way, drawing from a range of personalities and perspectives? How can we address potential user difficulty in reproducing such a gesture required to progress through the game? What strategies can be implemented to ensure that the game is accessible and inclusive for users, regardless of their abilities or backgrounds? Proposed solution. In developing the project, interviews were conducted to answer several questions. What is time for people? Their association with time, how quickly does it pass for them? I found that every person has a unique perspective on time, preferences and opinions about the meaning of time. For example, 4-year-old boy, when I asked for times to him, the answers was that time for him is 100 hours. Based on this, I created 3 characters, a child, a teenager, and a grandmother, to demonstrate the different perceptions of time at various ages. These characters were introduced authentically, reflecting different personalities and perspectives. The next task was to determine how users would interact with these stories and what form of input would be most effective, given that for implementation, I plan to use the Arduino system and create the shape using 3D printing technology. I decided to use the hand gestures as input and the narrative was as output. This allowed users to emphasize with the character perspective of time and interact with the story through intuitive hand movements. Project results. This resulted in a prototype device which was done using Arduino, a tool to design electronic devices, using the Arduino system sound sensor and accelerometer, and Fusion 360 to build and print a 3D object, using a rubber as material. And for interactive story, I used Twine, an open source tool to tell interactive online stories, movement stories. Written stories were adapted and processed by editing effects and background sounds. The entire development process is described on the GitHub. Information is pulled down by sections from interviews to final prototypes. The link of GitHub will be attached at the end of the presentation. My next slide is a short video demonstration of the demo. In conclusion, the project's innovative approach to game design, which includes the gathering insight from interviews and creating characters with a unique experience and perspective of time, offers a fresh and authentic approach to storytelling. By using hand gestures as input and the narrator's voice as output, the game provides an immersive and engaging experience for users. Perspective and needs. This project is still being finalized. Future step will allow us to refine a number of points and turn the prototype into a finished product. Thank you so much for your attention. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me by phone and email address. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. So now we are going to the next paper, which will be presented by Yannick Rochat from the University of Lausanne. And his paper is Lausanne 1830 Histoire de Registre. So I guess it will be about the valorization of historical data.
Hello everybody. It's a strong feeling for me because I came here long time ago, and I was still a, I think, PhD student or starting with postdoc, and I was wondering if one day I would be on stage and what I would be presenting that day. So I'm very happy here to be able to talk about this project. It was an 1830 Histoire de Registre. The game is available in English. It was natively written in French. You can play it online with the website lausanne1830.ch. Please, if you want to do that, wait until the end. This project was founded by the EPFL, the College of the Humanities, and was created by the Game Lab in the EPFL, some members of EPFL, some members of the University of Lausanne, and the game studio Digital Kingdom. I will detail this a bit more later. So with this project, we wanted to showcase, to allow to explore Lausanne two centuries ago. And we had a few ambitions with this project. First, we wanted this project to be designed by our own graduate students. We wanted to collaborate with historians, especially from the Lausanne Time Machine Initiative, which is digitizing archives from Lausanne, and with game developers, people with experience, because we do game studies, we do game analysis, we do a lot of things with the games, but you don't improvise yourselves as game designers. So we were happy to collaborate with Digital Kingdom, and we wanted this project to be conceived as a teaching resource in schools for teenagers from 12 to 15 years old. And we also had to create some pedagogical sequences, additional material for the teachers. We had other objectives. We wanted to create an educational game which did not compromise on gameplay and entertainment value. So I'm going to show you how we did that. So I'm always thinking back to this driving license theory tests. You can practice. At the time it was on a CD run, and you're just doing quizzes for a few hours, and then you can pass the test easily. We wanted to do the opposite of that. And we wanted to showcase these digitized archives. So there are like canisters. We had a register of all people who were living in Lausanne at the time, and some, of course, we had some images, paintings, stuff like that, digitized press too. And we wanted our students to be able to practice and to learn how to create games. So we hired 3 students, but this was outside the curriculum, so we paid them to work on the project. There was a narrative, game, and level designer. This is one person. There was someone in charge of the graphism, especially the pixel art, and somebody in charge of programming. So this is an image. This is the first screen you see when you leave the guy responsible for the register and you start exploring the city. This is the Place de la Palue in Lausanne, and you see that it's a bit inspired by games like some of the Zelda games, some of the Final Fantasy games, Secret of Mana, stuff like that. We didn't want to compromise on the graphism, so this was a big part of the development because we wanted the kids to really have fun, to want to explore this environment. We also had to give an interesting tasks to do. So we got inspired by Obradin, which was released a few years before, and which allow you to explore the game, to play the game by just gathering information. So we created such a notebook. Right? Ours is a bit shorter than the one we see on the right, but we had all this historical data about Lausanne, and then some of them were missing, and they are hidden in the environment of the game. So this is how we've been working. For example, here to create this first scene. We spent a month on this one because it was our vertical slice, our prototype. We had to make it work before we could develop the rest of the game. So of course we had to cut a few nice to have and a few few other scenes, but we had to have this one working. It's also used as some kind of tutorial. There is one first tutorial, but the first enigma is also entirely solved in this place. So as you can see, we had characters, we had a few written sources. On the right bottom, you have digitized press. We also had images. And from that, we could reconstruct this Place de la Paix. One very interesting thing here that I love to show up front is that, in fact, it's not the Place de la Paix buildings were not like that, the floor was not like that. Maybe you can recognize some of the buildings, the town hall, but everything is stick together because it's a video game and you have to have things fitting in the scene. It's not a 3D game. And so one of the first things we teach to the children when we go in the classrooms with this game is that this is a video game and we had to have everything fitting together. But when we play, it's not historically accurate. And when you are playing video games in general, you have to know that people have to make choices when they're designing the games, and you don't have to take everything for face value. Another example, when we had to create this contract, which has a few ins inside of it, so we took some historical sources, and we had to pixelize them. So you see it's a bit more dense, it's difficult to read on the left, we had to keep some of that original feel. We also created a map of the game. This is another compromise because people didn't have maps at the time. So this is some official map on the left. We also took some calasters and we created a map that you are using on the right. And then once again, when we go in the classrooms, we explain to them that this kind of material is here because it's a video game, not because it was used at the time. Of course, there are many things which totally existed at the time that you can see in the game. For example, some of the jobs, some of the places, all the people are taken from the registers, the number of kids they had, their names, their position. So a few other scenes here. Top left, you can see people brewing beer. A few ads on the right, and here, bottom right, it's the outside of the brewery. It's near the front. If you've been to Lausanne, maybe you know the front. It's a neighborhood. At the time, it's still nowadays a river. At the time, the river was outside. So kids, when they go there, they're like, what is this? Where is this place? What is the front? And then we can contextualize and start talking about the river, but also about the fact that upstream, on the river, it's another scene. You have people polluting it. For example, there was a butcher, a leatherman who was putting all the dead corpses of the animals in the water. So here in the scene, you have someone who is sick because the water is polluted. So there's a lot of hidden things inspired by historical facts that can lead then to the organization, to the animation of pedagogical sequences. So as an output, we started, once we had this first scene, we started playtesting the game in different classrooms. So we had at least once a month a test. We always had new builds that we could show. We were gathering a lot of very interesting feedback. So of course, the game was always too hard. We had to ease it. We had also to redesign some things to create new tutorials, explanations. We didn't want to have too much text, so we had to find solutions through mechanics and not through adding more text. We are working, it takes a lot of time, but we are working in collaboration with schools and the school system involved to try to have a game inserted into the program. So we had a lot of teachers who used the game in their classes, but it was their own initiative, so we would like to have something which is a bit more systemic. And we were very happy last year in the last Swiss Game Awards to win the serious game category with this game. So here is the development team. The 3 students were Sarah Jones, who has now been hired as a game designer, so we are pretty happy for her. And we think it's a success also for work projects. Sarah Jalon, who was in charge of the graphism, and Andrew Davis, who was in charge of the programming. I was working as a lead with my colleague Céline Christian and with Isabella Dinato from the Time Machine Initiative. And we've been working with external experts, so René Bianchi, René Petitpierre, Lucas Rappo, Simon Dupin-Pravo. There's also, no, I think there were some other people helping, but these are the main ones. And of course, we had a lot of chance to be able to work with Digital Kingdom from Vevey. So they were supervising our students. They helped us a lot at the beginning of the project to choose, in fact, what kind of game we wanted to do, which kind of game mechanics we wanted to have. So it was very fruitful for us to have this collaboration. So the game is available online. We had to create our own websites because the school system in Vaud has a lot of different locks, which we had to circumvent. That's it, I think. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. And there's any questions from the audience? I have, yes.
Yes, thank you, Eric, for your nice talk. I have a question about the pedagogical scenario. Did you design the pedagogical scenario so that you have a debriefing or something like that? And can you give us some insight about what you did in the classroom?
Yeah, so what we did at the beginning, so we started programming the game, designing and programming the game, and then we asked some of the historians who worked with us to create such pedagogical sheets. So we created a few scenarios where, for example, every time we let the children play the game for 45 minutes, because it's more or less the time we need to play the game, we do that for free. We can give them a small introduction or a few hints at the beginning. And then with the teacher of the classroom, we go back to all this material. So often what we do is go through the historical material we were using. And this is how we experimented at the beginning. But right now we've been working both with teachers and with tacticians. I don't know how to call that, because we realize that it's not easy to improvise yourself as a teacher, and that we need to go more in detail, working with teachers in order to build this structure. So that's what we're doing right now. We are adapting what we did at the beginning. So yeah, I would say there was a lot of improvisation at the beginning, but we are now turning in material which is experimented in the classrooms with the teachers. So I cannot go into more detail. There's already some of this stuff which is on the website, but it's currently being adapted. So I think it's going to be closer to what's used in the classrooms in a few months. Thank you for the question.
I have a following question. Now, you say that you created this game, and now what about it? Can you add content into the game, or what is the future of the game? Is it static, or are you going to add content that is fun?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. It's so the game is finished. We had some time and some remaining budget to create the English version and to correct a few bugs. But right now the project is not under development anymore. But the thing is that everything is open source, even the images. So there is the system, there are the images and all the text. So either people can do some pull requests on GitHub they contribute to the project and create new scenes. This is highly improbable, but somebody could launch a new project and adapt this one to another geographical context, for example. So yeah, it's still open to development, but probably not by us.
Thank you. Any more questions? Thank you very much. So the next paper will be as well like a video, I guess, right? Yeah. So this is as well a project from the HE-Arc School of Art and Design at HEC in Geneva. And this the author is Narges Madani, and his paper is In My Time of Loss.
Hello everyone, I'm Narges, a master's student in media design at Geneva. I want to present my project In My Time of Loss, an interactive story and narrative game with a set of cards. The background of my project includes different notions, importantly how games as media can help our grief. Grief is an emotional response to loss. One of the coping strategies is remembering memories. Reminding memories of the lost one is important as it reinforces their presence within us, keeping their essence alive in our minds. Games designed for grieving individuals have the potential to offer emotional expression and for promoting healing. To answer the questions on this slide, I became familiar with the notion of individuation by Carl Gustav Jung. My project focuses on Jungian individuation and grief integration to promote self-realization and personal growth. By exploring emotions and memories related to the loss, individuals can integrate them into their evolving selves, leading to healing and growth. Jungian individuation is a milestone in the ideation of my projects. In my project, I explored the concept of emotional synchronization and its relationship with time. When people feel affection for each other, they experience synchronized heartbeats, breathing, and emotions. But how can we synchronize with our deceased loved ones? One way is by remembering their memories and keeping them alive within us. Firefly synchronization was a captivating form of communication for me. In Japanese culture, fireflies symbolize lost loved ones. Their synchronized illuminating metaphorically represents the emotional connection between individuals and their departed loved ones. Also, Jungian individuation is like journeying through a labyrinth of the mind, where we explore our inner depth while gaining personal growth. All these inspirations helped me in creating a narrative for this project. This project explores various aspects of grief and offers meaningful coping mechanisms. It facilitates self-realization, self-compassion, and the search for meaning through a neutral story and play experience design. The interactions and symbols create a magical sense, providing comfort during this experience. I wrote a story using Twine software about a person who is trying to explore their lost one. I made a narration with different branches in which we can choose different ways to experience different outcomes in the story. In the story, the character finds a maze-shaped bracelet. It's a map of a special garden. With each step, she gets closer to her goal. Along the way, she faces two paths and has to make important decisions. One path, or storyline, which is existential, is about remembering or forgetting her loved one. And the other, which is spiritual, is about believing or doubting. These choices determine what happens next in the story. In the story, fireflies light the way while we can see the same path when the bracelet is also lit. They show us the right direction and the path we chose. After writing the story, I tried to create an interactive game that emotionally connects the player with the protagonist. Using the second-person point of view, I tried to do this. The game incorporates the Jungian archetype of the labyrinth as a metaphor for the journey of self-discovery and grief. The labyrinth is a metaphor of the brain, and the journey is our self-discovery. Lights in the game serve as guides, inspired by fireflies in Japanese culture, symbolizing the presence of the lost person. I decided to make the same bracelet in the real board so that the player can feel that she or he is the character of the story. On this bracelet, the labyrinth garden can be seen, and we can see the paths of light when we are in a specific direction. On each path of the maze, some lights can be lit with different storylines we choose. To create this experience, I used Arduino, a touch sensor, so we can control the bracelet and be decisive to choose the paths of the story. The touch sensor senses our touch, and we can choose paths by touching them and light the ways with touching. Also, I researched the interactions suitable for mourning and individuation, and I chose to touch the back of the hand, hand caress, because of its empathizing meaning. This can give a sense of empathy, create the image that the lost person is soothing us, and give us a sense of self-care. Based on the story, I made cards with the storyline illustrations that you can see here. This is a picture of bracelet development and its prototype, which was functional. This game offers 4 stories with different endings. The labyrinth bracelet acts as a guiding map. Through touch-sensitive light patterns, the bracelet corresponds to specific cards, leading to varied outcomes. We can choose to remember or let go of memories and believe or doubt in spirituality. Ultimately, we can discover the importance of keeping our loved one's memory alive by finding them in ourselves. As you can see, the process of using the bracelet is shown in this slide. You can touch the back of your hand and make the pattern of lights, and then you can find the pattern of light on the back of the cards, read the story, see the illustration, and go on. The narrative game In My Time of Loss utilizes a bracelet as a map to guide players through a labyrinth of life paths, exploring themes of grief. The 4 branches of the story delves into the complex emotions of grief, emphasizing self-reflection and introspection. The game serves as a therapeutic tool, offering a thought-provoking and engaging experience. To enhance the sense of closeness and presence of the lost loved one, the wearable device can incorporate heat generation during player interactions. Also, the project is a demo with short branch stories. The perspective for this project is writing more stories with different grief approaches. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you. So the last paper of the session, it will be invited Steve is always on the stage. So, so the paper is AL2049, a playful museum visit to brush the issue of complexity.
Okay, so it's me again. Where is the remote for the slide? I stole the remote. So I'm still working in this research project on game bus running in a museum, and it's a second game that has been designed for another museum, a museum about food production. So, still processing with our game can help teenagers to develop critical thinking and knowledge about food production. So, food production and complexity are relatively complex topic, and the complexity and systemic nature of food production is due to diverse factors, including cultural aspect. I don't know about you, but who here enjoy eating insects? Nobody. And well-being and health, food variety and nutritious food may improve your health. You know about that. Pollution, food production can have significant environmental impact, such as intensive livestock farming can generate greenhouse gases emission, thereby contributing to climate change. And there is also the management of limited source of energy, human energy, fossil energy. Food production will require a lot of energy, whether human, sustainable, or fossil-based energy. And the challenge we faced was to design a game allowing museum visitors to understand the systematic relation between those factors during a game museum visit. But we didn't face it alone. We collaborate with Digital Kingdom, where game developers, game designers, IT engineers were in charge of the development of the game. They accept us, even though we were researchers, because we needed to collect data and we wanted to go further in that research project. We also have with us some teachers, and it's always useful to have teachers with you because they know their students more than us. And we had access to classroom, we could prototype and test with them. And they were already involved in our previous game, the one I just presented before. And of course, museum staff members were also deeply involved in the game design process. And all together, we went from ideation. So what we did first was the game jam, where we had first idea about game mechanics and a game that should allow us to understand the interrelation in this food system. Then the Digital Kingdom's game designer did an amazing prototype paperboard, and we tested with the teachers. Then the team started developing, having concept, visual concept as well, and they developed the game. So it was firstly tested, not in the museum, in classroom, with students on tablets, and then it was, on the last pictures, implemented in the museum. This is where the game began. And we came back to have some experimentation and data collection about the game. So let's have a look at the game itself. The pitch is the following. Isolated from the rest of the world, you have to recreate the right environment to feed the population stuck in the museum for the next 20 years. So let's have a look at how it began. It was working before, it's alright. Overnight. Here we go without it. I can just explain. So players are welcomed by the game master, a game curator, museum curator, and he pitches them the game, he explains them how they must play, and give them some tablets. And the players start wandering around in the museum. They have a map to find themselves, and they must feed a short population. So this is the main gaming interface. What can be seen up there is food production. So the aim of the game is to feed 30%. Why 30%? Because in a class, we are between 20, 25, 27, and with the museum staff, people right there, we could be around 30. So we choose to be 30%. There is, of course, loss, food production loss, and there is energy that is available, like full fossil energy, so we can use machine in order to produce some food, sustainable energy, and people. We can give tools to people in order to feed themselves. And they have a map of the game, and they can allocate some space in order to produce some food. And the main game mechanics is to move around in the museum and find some physical space and then allocate various units. For example, you can choose between livestock farming, pigs, chicken, cattle, sheep, fish, insect. Otherwise, you can have some cereal, pearls, market gardener. You can have a processing facility, which will help you to reduce food loss. What can be seen here as the first systemic between, if you want to have a process facilities, you first need to have some animals. There is an agronomy laboratory, which gives you some bonus if you use it right. And then there is also food facilities that will reduce your food loss. You can add a market, a restaurant. And you can decide between those allocations. And then, for example, she chose to have some fish. So the map of the image changed, and the museum has now a fish producing unit, and so on and so on. So what can be seen? It's now I have a better food production, but I still have some place to allocate. And I did it by myself. I went quite full green with a lot of cereals, pigs, chicken, a restaurant, and I fit even more than 30%. So, which is quite good. I think I have achieved the game, and I should have won. And I still have a couple energy available. But that's where the complexity begins. Because now I can go forward in time. Let's see how this population feel and live in 10 years. And we realize that it's not so well. So, okay, everybody survived, good to know, but my population is ill. Why are they ill? It's not because of the nutritive variety, which is quite good, but because of pollution and greenhouse gases. And about the well-being, my population feels good because there is a good balance between pleasure, doing something else than working for food production, and workload. And now players will face complexity, and they go back in time and try to improve their food production system. As you can see, there is nothing that appears on the interface. So there is a health goal, which is quite low, and the well-being goal, which is quite good now. And also some pictograms that will give you some insight about where you can try to improve your food production system. What can be seen here, it's there and there. I have a lot of greenhouse gases because I allocate some fossil energy. So, okay, let's try. We will remove all the fossil energy. So this is what I did. And just look at the gauge up. So I remove all the fuel energy. I had to remove them with sustainable energy and people working. So now the well-being is quite low. But the health is a little bit better, but I even had to sacrifice one space. So I have less food. And people die. And now players are facing complexity. And the game mechanics is all about that. All trying to compromise between people who live, okay, but in good health, with a lot of nutritive variety or not, and with well-being. And going on and on and on, players will try to optimize their food production, but you know what? They will never have a full goal. So, still a research project as well. So we had the opportunity to have a mixed method, such a qualitative process with audio records, still with my GoPro camera. And also the game is producing a lot of trust, thanks to digital keypad to add a server, and we can do some quantitative analysis of the gameplay experience. The perspective is needed, first on a research perspective, we are so far collect until 100 parties, so the game is fully played, and we need a little bit more to do some more quantitative research. And the game could evolve in something even more virtual with hologlasses. But I see some disadvantage about this. For example, it was a collective game, and then you are alone by yourself with your classes, but you can directly allocate some pegs in various spaces of the museum. This could be a potential perspective. The take-home message will be that this game teaches that there is not a perfect, unique solution for food production. I'm sorry to say that it will be a huge challenge to feed the population in the future. And players, teenagers, must learn about it. A resource management game, which is a resource management game, can be metaphorical because we had to take a really complex system and to simplify it in a small museum where resources are limited, space is limited, and energy as well. And everybody can play HE-Arc, not only the teenagers. At the beginning, we were expected to have a game for players between 12 to maybe 20, and we have even tested with players that are 8 years old. They don't really understand the systemic systemic, but they still have fun in the museum, and adults as well have a lot of fun playing it. The typography, and of course, kudos to Digital Kingdom, the team who did an amazing job to develop this game. Thank you. You can press the game with the tiny URL right there. Thank you.
Any question? Yes.
Thank you so much. I was wondering, how is it possible that the population feel so sick and be very pleased? I mean, if people are like, I would say 20% of the population is sick, it's an issue, and if they are very sick, and they are happy, how is it possible? It was a slide 14.
There. So if they're really sick, can they be happy? Yeah, somehow it depends. If they're really sick, can they be happy? Not really, not really. So somehow there is something wrong there. But sure, health and well-being is quite connected together. Maybe you have a lot of fun because you don't have to work, but at the same time, some people are in a bad shape and a bad mood. So it could be maybe a bit better balance. But most of the times, players have a really low score of health and really low score of well-being. And then they decide to focus on one of the factors. For example, they decide that it's okay if we are 10 people alive, but all of us are in good health and well-being, and I don't care about the 20 who are dead. So we see a lot of playing strategy that are connecting with ethics as well.
Any more questions? Yes.
Thanks for your talk. I guess my question is related to the other one. How realistic are the game mechanics? I guess you have to. I mean, what were your sources? And a very quick one. Why 2049?
Okay. So we had some scientific sources, and it was all about pondering that action in comparison with another one. So we had in our team the director of the museum who was really involved in this kind of food production and know lots about it, much more than me. Also a colleague of mine, and the work was based on scientific documentation. HE-2049 is related to a science fiction book, I guess. That was instead HE-2049, something like this. So, and 2049 also with the idea that let's see how the population will feed themselves in the future.
Any more questions? Okay, so I think we can close the sessions. Thank you.
so got something like this is for you actually. So we make a small break for coffee or something like that, and then we'll have pleasure to have parents and sorry for that. I have a memory, a fish memory. Federica Neuchâtel, who will talk about how to manage the power of communication for lowering barrier to technical learning and increasing diversity in the tech environment. So let's do a kind of small break, 20 minutes, and see you good matter. So please.
I think it's shared. Hello everybody, it's a good news. I am your only obstacle to the time of aperitif. And so I'm going to try to be sweet and short, and I'll be sharing some ideas with you. Okay. So first to thank you, the organizers of the conference. It has been a pleasure hearing about all of your project and research, and it has been a very nice day full of positive energy. So really, thank you for that. I'm very, very happy to be doing that. And today I wanted to present you two examples, two projects that are both a personal and also a community project. But first, I think it's important to have just a few lines about who I am. So my name is Federica. I was born in Italy, and now I'm based in Brussels, and I work as a freelancer in the video games field and the software industry. I'm very passionate about the topic of diversity, inclusion, and accessibility, and I'm part of different organizations, including Women in Games, as an ambassador. And my role is to advocate for these values in this field, to increase diversity and making a more diverse in market, also for businesses, but also for people. Another thing that I would like to mention before going into the introduction of the project that I wanted to present is that you can, for free, find a white paper created by Women in Games, which is based in the UK, but has collaborated with the International Software Federation of Europe, and it's a guide that you can read. It has been developed with the best practices that you can implement in your workplace or in your research projects to make sure that you are taking care of also any kind of DEI aspect in your business or project in general. Today, as I said briefly before, I wanted to present a sort of a personal but also community project, because I'm going to present two community-based projects that are aiming at lowering the barriers of technical learning and increasing diversity. I wanted also to specify what I mean by lowering the barriers of technical learning. It's very difficult for people that have a different background and also a different upbringing, and maybe have also a different network of people around them to maybe get into the technical learning, and also in certain working fields, such as, for instance, gaming. It's very hard to find skilled people, because in fact you need sometimes to have either a very specialized education, or at the same time having a very broad and general understanding of the industry. A true problem that businesses are facing, in fact, right now is the fact that they cannot find the right people. So, as an ambassador and also as a person who is passionate about this problem, I think it's important to go to the root of the problem and try to understand how can we welcome the greatest number of people into learning simple technical skills that can improve and increase their skill level in the everyday life. As I said, of course, these are like situations that can definitely benefit both individuals and businesses, but also your project. A solution to these kind of problems, in fact, is definitely gamification. As we have seen today, it has been super helpful in different projects, but also in this case can make technical education more engaging and can attract diverse learners with a diverse background. And I really wanted to stress something that is very important to me. In this case, we're not just talking about gender diversity or identity. We're really talking about diverse background in general. So someone, for instance, with a humanistic background who has studied something completely different but wanted to reach out into tech, or think that learning these kind of very technical topics could really help improve their career, or is just curious about that. but sometimes doesn't have the means to get access to these resources. At the same time, another challenge is definitely how to keep on going. So how do you keep the motivation? How do you make sure that you're always productive? How you can gamify also the learning experience that comes with having to learn technical skills. That is definitely a lifelong process. So I wanted to get back again on what are some of the current problems that I'm gonna go into details right now. So, for instance, we know that the tech industry is definitely rapidly growing, and as we said, it demands skilled professionals that are very difficult to find. There are countries that advocate in other countries, neighbors countries, to find people to train because they don't have enough developers, for instance. And at the same time, their pool of candidates is too similar. So we know that increasing the diversity also in your skill set and the people you have on your team or that have access to certain resources is definitely a challenge, and you want to definitely put the accent on increasing your diversity to have a more successful product at the end. Furthermore, of course, there are like increasing important topics in an area of interest in which it would be important to have more skilled professionals, such as cybersecurity, game development, data analytics, and so on and so forth. And also in this case, I think it's important that anyone could have a little understanding, a general understanding about what is cybersecurity, data privacy. Maybe game development sometimes can get useful also for someone with a humanistic background, as I have, for instance. I have a humanistic background, but a very technical passion. In terms of knowledge, there are like in the industry, in tech and gaming, we can see that there are like sometimes situations like biases that prevent people from entering the industry, or when entered, they don't have the same resources. So this is definitely another problem that we need to tackle, that into consideration whenever we are trying to address these kind of issues. Again, another problem, as I said briefly before, is that the professional, once you enter in that, you need to keep up your motivation and be able to, in a way, manage your time, your productivity, and also trying to, tackle the different responsibilities, especially if you are coming from a different background. And in this case, we have seen that definitely the value of gamification has been very successful, especially in some examples and the project I will be presenting briefly. For instance, gamification has definitely the potential to transform lifelong and technical skills learning, and it makes it, as we said, more accessible and engaging for a diverse range of learners. Once again, keep in mind someone who definitely has no idea about how to inspect a website, and with just a little game can learn how to do that. At the same time, once again, you can attract a wider range of learners, you can increase the diversity, and you can increase the point of view, the cultural background, and also the workforce. At present, we can see that definitely there are like some games and tools that are available that can use gamification to make learning, both learning and the lifelong learning, more interesting. I'm gonna show a couple of examples that are already present, that are not part of the main project, but I think they were really useful, especially the first one is something that I use personally. So as I said, I have a humanistic background, but tech interest, and this is like a game that I used to learn CSS. So you code in the website, and you try to move the frogs on their leaves using coding. And by doing so, you kind of refresh your mind if you're already a knowledgeable user. But if you are like completely new to that, it's a fun way, an engaging way to learn something new that can be definitely useful. For instance, this has been useful as a marketer in a website design, website in general, checking the user journey. So it's very much an example of something that can benefit someone who is not a developer. Again, this is another example. This is called Vim Adventures, and it teaches you how to use the Vim text editor, which has the characteristics of that can be used basically just with your keyboards, and that is easy and difficult at the same time because you need to learn a lot of shortcuts. And by doing so, you are the little guy that goes through the maze and opens the chest and does that just by learning the shortcuts of Vim. And lastly, I wanted to present, this is a bit, oh no, there is a sort of CSS problem, I think. But this is part of the personal and community-based project. So as I said, when I wanted to get access to the technical learning, and I saw myself in a sort of alone situation, so I kind of built up a community of people that were interested in the same learning journey. And some of them were so talented to create and co-create Discord bots that could make the learning coding easier, and the first one, and the second one is improving your learning journey, so task-based, productivity check, and so on and so forth. If you don't know what is Discord, it's a platform for mainly used by gamers, but it's also used in working context to exchange files, chat, messages, voice messages, and it's very much used in the gaming community, but lots of companies have been using that also for project management and keeping up with the project and talking to employees and collaborators. So as I said, there were mainly two projects that were developed within this community. The first one is a JavaScript bot, and the second one is a productivity rewarding system. This, the first one, for instance, is aimed at making the learning of JavaScript contextual to this platform. So it's not something that you need to seek actively outside of your working or fun environment. It's something that is present. You can input code within the chat, within the platform, and it will output the result as if it was a browser or an editor. So you can see some examples of code here. It's pretty neat, I would say. As you can see, it can output the graphic. It can get triggered by the Animoji, which is custom of the JavaScript logo. And it has also built-in variable functions, such as the studio function, in which by defining some notes, it will go into the voice channel and play a music. So it's pretty interesting, and what I would like to stress on this idea is how to create something that is contextual to an environment of fun or working, so that people that do not have your background can learn something more and can be useful. The second example is this one. So as you can see, there are like some elements of gamification, like the reward system, the point system, and I don't know if you're familiar with the Pomodoro technique about learning, but basically when you can define session or productive session in which you decide to learn certain things, and this session can be a 25-50 minutes, and then after that you can receive like a notification that your session is done, you can take a break. By doing so, by doing like a rewarding system, like a task, you're able to define tasks within the chat, and you can receive rewards, points, badges, and so on and so forth. People are more motivated to work, and they find also the working and learning experience not anymore a solitary one, but a shared experience, because indeed it's part of a community, it's contextual to the leisure but also work environment. And another thing that is very much interesting to me is the fact that anyone who has an objective to about learning something new is very welcome to participate. For instance, I wanted to learn how to do some random pixel art, and so I did the pixel art for the bot while the developer coded the backend. I also coded a couple of messages that could react to words in the chat. So this is like an example how the gamification can really also foster the motivation in learning something very, very much different. The result of this were that we are more than 600 members, and at that time more than 500 members use them actively. They found it fun. They found it also like a point of reference for their own projects. We had a very nice and positive feedback and improved engagement within the community. Other than that, of course, making technical learning like JavaScript, which is very much used in web development, more fun and interactive and accessible also to people that were not initially developers. So I would like to conclude saying that gamification definitely offers a powerful tool for addressing the two challenges that I presented at the beginning. So how to learn technical skills in a fun way, also for people that have not that background, at the same time increasing diversity. So definitely that could be an option that you can consider in your research project, in your businesses. How can I make it fun? How can I make it more accessible? How can I lower the entry barrier? There are many games also in the gaming field that are super easy, can be also idle games, they're called, and they're considered also more accessible, because if you lower the entry barrier also in terms of skills, you make it more accessible for people to play, to engage with your game. And well, in the case of the community-based project, I think it was a great example of learning by doing, the project-based learning, but at the same time how to learn together, how to create something that can benefit many people at the same time. So, and it was contextual indeed by to work and learning. So I was very, very impressed by the talent of people, but at the same time I was very proud about uniting in a way gamification, education, and technical skills, which it's something that I really care about. So as I said, I will be sweet and short. So feel free to contact me if you want to discuss. If you have a question also after the conference, I'll be happy to answer.
Well, thank you so much, Erika. That was short and intense for sure. And do you guys have some questions? Oh, come on, we are better. Yeah.
Thank you for that talk. It's a really great talk. Going back to those Discord bots that you used, and so thinking back, during the pandemic, a lot of schools started to switch to e-learning and have their own chat rooms. Have you ever considered or made projects like to use some approach like that in a school, preschool environment?
That is very interesting. Thank you for the question. Actually, personally, no, I haven't thought about proposing that to school, like primary schools environment. But indeed, it is something very interesting, and actually boomed. This project, in fact, were mainly development, like the starting idea was definitely during those years of the pandemic, in which a lot of people were at home, and that was very difficult to keep on the concentration, but at the same time, lots of people wanted to learn something new. That is definitely a great idea. The only thing is that possibly at this time I wouldn't then consider maybe Discord itself, because indeed it looks it's still very much gaming related, and also you are subject to changes that are native to the platform, but you cannot really control. So you need to change possibly the entire project. So I would definitely create something native that is more suitable to the stack they're using. I know that schools sometimes use very much Google or Teams or Zoom, so definitely maybe create plugins or something like that. I think it could be, could integrate better with the tools they're already using.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Another question, maybe? I do have a couple of questions. I was wondering, you said that you were really caring about gamification. So it's kind of a personal question. Why?
Why I care about gamification? Well, indeed, because in a way it's something that I experienced. So I wanted to learn something that it was very hard to me, but it still had like a huge interest. And I always try to make something that when I have to do a task, I always try to make it a bit more creative and fun because that's the way I learn in a way. By like this project that we're very much built within the community and the developers created that with that intent. I think it's just a showing of being altruistic in a way, but also trying to help the others, trying to understand how to communicate better, something that you're a master in an easy way, and you definitely use elements that take part for the gaming world. So you reward, you send, you have points, you can have contextual chat, you use a different tone of voice and storytelling. So yeah, I think it's just the most creative way of learning, and I think that's more engaging. That's why I think I care about it.
Okay, thank you. I have one last and very tricky question.
Okay, I'm gonna try.
I'm sure you heard of some institutes or places where there is this gender parity and it's asked to. What do you think about this asked to? Okay,
I understand,
we must
like
have
enforcing.
50-50 or at least 50% of women or at least 50% maybe on some other areas not organized nurses. They try to get better. What do you think?
I understand. Well, I'm gonna ask from a very personal point of view. This is super personal. So what I think is that, as I said before, it's not about a matter of gender or identity. So I think that in that case it could be rephrased, and I think the gender quota enforcement was just a first step to kind of educate people in seeing the diversity of backgrounds. What is important for me, and I think what this gives like the true value in teams and projects, is people who have different opinions, who have a different background, have a different story, but have the same vision, have the same passion, and the same motivation. So yes, I think each project can definitely choose the policy they want. I think it's a first step, but to me it's more important to kind of have a sort of a meritocracy first, and then making sure that you have considered all the possibilities in how to enrich your team. So what is the missing puzzle to your composition? That is very personal from as an opinion.
I think there's a question.
Yes. Sorry, I hesitate to ask my question because it's also a very tricky question. Okay. It's not a trap, it's just a question that I ask myself, and I would like to have your opinion. It's about education and gamification. Education is to make people more free to think by themselves, to emancipate people. And gamification is more about to manipulate people. So there is a paradox for when you mix gamification and I mix as well, but there is a paradox. How do you deal with this paradox to mix gamification and education?
So let me try to see if I understood correctly your question. You're saying that education as a more of learning focus, while gamification. Okay.
We try to educate people to make them free to think by themselves.
Yes.
Yes. And when we use gamification, it's more about to manipulate to obtain a certain behavior from somebody. So there is a discrepancy between the two visions. And my question is, how you manage to deal with this paradox about the link between gamification and education?
Okay, well, yeah, indeed, it's a very tricky question. So gamification, you said, sometimes is a manipulation, so in terms that it's a sort of a nudge to people to do the right thing in the ecosystem of the platform of the game. Yeah, I would like to think that gamification is a positive nudge for the positive and better results. I think that in terms of this education, so it's technical, it is unbiased. There is no risk, I would like to say, because we are learning something that is as it is. In terms of more humanistic, there is a very tough challenge that I will have to think about that. So how can you reinforce that? It's a different challenge for sure, and that's very interesting. But I don't have an answer on that. I think I would definitely try to be as neutral as possible in the institution in which you don't want to be biased.
Yes, just to say that I like your idea of positive nudge. I think it's a good way to think about gamification and education. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Actually, I agree too. It is very true that gamification has been used a lot for advertising, for instance, and it was kind of manipulation side. But still, I believe that people are not also as idiot as they like to show, and if they are engaged, they can see themselves being more engaged because of the style they could get and stuff like that. But still, they are aware of what's going on more or less. And living is quite like this. I mean, you are motivated by what's going on. Other questions? So, this is the end for the day.
Thank you.